Today's episode, we're talking about weed and how it intersects with sports in 2021. Now, what this episode inspires you to do afterwards, that's your business. And what I choose to do, well, that's mine. This is more explanation needed. Whether you're willing to admit it or not, sports franchises are run like corporations, even governmental bodies. They have to. There's too much money involved. But the thing that tends to happen is these wealthy owners who canvass the landscape of sports tend to adopt the ideologies of those same governmental bodies that I mentioned previously. Like case in point, Ronald Reagan adopted the idea of trickle-down economics in the 80s. The summary of the trickle-down philosophy is that you lower taxes on the big business and the wealthy, they'll produce more, and the economically less privileged will benefit. That same notion was utilized in labor negotiations for the 2011 NFL CBA with the proposal of rookie scale creating economic parity in the league. Owners pocketed that money and essentially destroyed the middle class for NFL players. Which then arrives at our discussion about marijuana. The awful stigma that weed carried for generations is mostly a thing of the past now. However, I can't help but think the amount of business lost by players, specifically those who've been victimized by that same stigma. Throughout this country's history, Black and brown people have been criminalized at harsher penalties for drugs in general, with marijuana being one of those substances. It'd be foolish not to think that those practices wouldn't extend to professional sports. Of the four major sports, the two that are predominantly African American, the NFL and the NBA, have notoriously had the harshest penalties for marijuana usage across sports. Over the past 20 years alone, various players have lost out on millions and endured criticism of negative public perception by simply enjoying recreational marijuana. Ricky Williams took 2 sabbaticals away from the game because he was forbidden from smoking weed during his bouts with anxiety. He even had to pay back the Dolphins millions of dollars in signing bonus money. Josh Gordon in 2013 led the NFL in receiving despite missing several games, but his frequent run-ins with failed marijuana tests not only squandered away millions in game checks, it also destroyed the idea of that mega second deal. That generational type money. Even in the NBA, Larry Sanders was suspended 10 games for violating the league's policy on substance abuse, as well as Nerlens Noel, Thabo Sefolosha, Maurice Taylor, and many more. Even Mitch McGary's career was derailed by the strenuous weed consequences in the NBA. As the stigma tends to dissipate with marijuana proving to be an effective medicinal substance and becoming legal in many states, sports leagues are abolishing testing and penalties for it. The NBA ended their testing in the bubble and continued that for this season. The NFL doesn't seem far off in shedding their antiquated drug policies either, as mentioned by Jerry Jones. But the beauty in the circumstances is that players are not only speaking out how cannabis is aided in their performance or their healing, they're also being sure to get into the business of it as well. Al Harrington has his very own weed brand with Viola. Gary Payton has his very own pack, and NFL Hall of Famer Calvin Johnson is even in the weed business. So, I say all of that to say this. While we continue to shed the stigma of marijuana and leagues continue to pat themselves on the back for getting rid of outdated and at times prejudiced drug policies, let's be sure we acknowledge the careers lost to the stigmas that are cultural norms now. And hopefully, in a perfect world, we'll do right by those players. It's the least we can do.